Photos are a funny thing. We stand there, smile, hold perfectly still, and look into a device that essentially freezes time. Why? To be honest, I'm not really a fan of taking photos this way. When I take a photo, I'm usually trying to accomplish one of two things. The first, and probably more common, is trying to catch something candid, like these. Now, technically speaking, these aren't great photos. They're not tack sharp, they're grainy, composition and lighting could be better. In other words, they're flawed, like real life. And they capture a fleeting moment before it's gone forever. Well, hopefully gone forever. I don't really want our son to continue seeking comfort in our earlobes when he's 15. So the second type of photo I like to take is this kind, of things that are surreal. What can I say? I love Photoshop. To me, these are fun because they let you create an image that looks real but never really existed. They're also probably the most attention-grabbing. Alright, let's woodwork. So as you should probably know by now, I'm making picture frames in this video. I know this isn't the most exciting project of all time, and I swear, I've got some really cool, much bigger builds coming up. But hopefully I can make this one interesting. I really wanted to do something bigger this month, but I also wanted to make some Christmas gifts, and well, that's what these are. So after I had all the wood milled and cut to approximate length, I started ripping. I ripped the pieces a decent amount wider than I wanted their finished size to be. I figured this would leave me with some real estate for finalizing and cleaning things up down the road, and just making them less chunky in general. Next I cut 45-degree miters on one end of each of the pieces. An added benefit of leaving the pieces extra wide is that if there's any tear out on the back end, it's likely to get removed later. Conversely, if the piece is already to its finished width, you don't really have any extra material to play with. That said, I have to say, I was using this sled with no backer piece to prevent tear out, and the pieces came out really clean. And I'm not being paid to say that either. Though, in full disclosure, Rockler did send me some tools to play with, but there were no strings attached. At least, not that I'm aware of. With one side cut from each piece, I marked out my total length and cut miters on the opposite end of each piece. I'm making 5 frames in total for this video. 2 of the frames are 23 by 23 inches, and the other 3 are 23 by 29 inches. So I'm really only cutting 2 different lengths of piece for the entire project, 23 and 29 inches. Here I'm marking and cutting out a rabbet for the back of the frames. This is the little pocket that the piece of glass, the picture, map board, and backer board will eventually go. So determining the depth of the recess has to do with, well, whatever you're planning to put in the frame. So here's where I had to make a decision. My initial idea was to cut a long angle on each piece. It was going to be something like this, just to give the frame a little more design. I cut the angle on a few practice pieces and it looked cool, but then I kind of had a change of heart. I thought, you know, the star of the show shouldn't really be the frame. The star of the show should be the picture. And really anything that pulls your attention away from the picture is essentially a disservice. And who am I to distract the viewer? And that, my friends, is how you justify your laziness. Anyway, since I decided that I wasn't going to make that bevel cut, that was pretty much it for actually cutting out the pieces. So I went about gluing the frames together. I let the glue set up overnight, and the next day I went out to put some splines in the frame. This reinforces the joint and makes it much stronger. This jig is super simple. I copied it from a jig that David PICCIUTO made over on his channel, Make Something. I'll put a link below. Check it out if you're interested for sure. For the actual splines, I know that a lot of people like to use something with contrast, but I stuck to my guns with the picture is the star thing, and just used walnut. For me, the splines were really more about function than looks. Also, there's still a little contrast there since the grain doesn't exactly match, and actually it came out looking really subtle and cool. So after everything was set up, I trimmed the extra spline material and trimmed the frames down to their finished size. I want to take a second to say thank you to all my Patreon members. New to the list this month are Dylan Parker, Dustin Henson, Roger Wong, and Patrick Lysell. You guys are the best. I feel pretty confident that if I were ever framed for murder, it wouldn't be by one of you. But anyway, if you want to find out how you can support the show too, there's a link in the description. And as always, no pressure. After I had sanded everything with 80 grit, I fixed a couple spots in the miters where there were little gaps. If the gaps are really small like this, you can usually just put a little bit of glue in the gap and start sanding so that it fills it up with sawdust. I've always seemed to have really good luck with it. Just make sure that you sand enough that you don't leave glue on there. You might not notice it when you're sanding, but when you start applying finish, it'll become apparent. While I let the finish cure, I could turn my attention to matting the prints for the frames. I actually just made a video on this where I go over how to cut mat board in detail, so I'm not going to go over it again here, but I'll put a link. And with everything finished, it was time to put it all together. So here they are, framed, matted, and set for hanging. Ready to adorn our walls and live as a testament for years to come to the things we loved, the places we went, and the way things were. And weren't. See you next time.